Hi, I'm Lance Stroll and I'm going to take you for a spin around Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. So we're opening the lap here in Montreal, going down the main straight, quite bumpy under braking into corner one. You kind of barrel into turn one, get the car stopped, hooked up for turn two. Got to focus on a good exit out of turn two. Into turn 3 and 4, you're riding the curbs. It's quite bumpy through that section, but you got to be committed. Hard braking, over the curb. Got to get a good exit out of turn 7, and heading to the next chicane. Up the box, hard braking, ride the curbs, and back on the pedal. Here's a pretty special corner we're approaching, the hairpin. You got to be hard on the brakes there. It's very easy to lock up the front right, and it's important to get a good exit for the long back straight. DRS open, approaching speeds of 350 kilometers an hour. Spotting the braking zone for the famous Wall of Champions chicane. Ride the curbs. And over the start-finish line. That is a lap around Montreal.
There were blue skies above, but a very green track beneath the world's fastest drivers as they hit the track for first practice in Canada.
The track is insanely dirty.
Copy.
The dusty circuit proved challenging under brakes for many, with F2 Championship leader and Williams reserve Nicholas Latifi finding conditions tricky early on. But it wasn't just the dust that caught him by surprise.
I almost just hit the ground hard.
While drivers surged to find ever-increasing grip on the Montreal street circuit, the Mercedes pair showed their prowess. Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas literally inseparable.
So that's identical time to Valtteri, so both P1.
And with the walls so close, precision is everything around Montreal. And Antonio Giovinazzi found there was no margin for error at turn 9.
Antonio, all okay?
Yeah, I touched the wall.
Copy, Antonio.
And looking for room was as tricky as looking for grip. Alex Albon found himself in the way of Toro Rosso teammate Danny Kvyat.
Tell him to let me by.
And Hamilton came upon a slow Lance Stroll as he finished a lap. It wasn't a clean session for Ferrari, with Charles Leclerc locking up and Sebastian Vettel spinning at the hairpin. Ferrari was some way off the times of the two Mercedes, but still have the soft compound tyres to try. Max Verstappen separated them in his Red Bull and showed he was on the limit over Canada's curbs. Mercedes might have topped the sheets by a healthy margin, but a late fuel pressure issue for Bottas took some of the shine off an otherwise perfect session for the Silver Arrows.
A lot of misfiring.
So we lost fuel pressure.
Alfa Romeo had a better session on Kimi Raikkonen's side of the garage, the Finn in the top 6, despite things feeling a little different in the cockpit.
Do we have some new cables here on the right hand side, because I'm hitting something all the time?
But the rest of the midfield were right behind the Iceman, 5 different teams occupying the bottom half of the top 10. Sainz for McLaren, Ricciardo for Renault, Racing Point's Sergio Perez and Kevin Magnussen's Haas in P10. But after an encouraging Monaco weekend, both Toro Rossos were in the bottom 5, with Stroll and the 2 Williams. George Russell just 0.2 ahead of Latifi. Having topped FP1, all was looking good for Mercedes going into second practice in Montreal, and championship leader Lewis Hamilton and teammate Valtteri Bottas duly set the fastest times in the opening half hour. But Hamilton caught the curb at turn 8, throwing his Mercedes out of shape and striking the wall with his right rear wheel. The defending champion carefully nursing his car back to the pits.
Sorry about that.
Just keep the car speed low.
And the chicane proved tricky for others too. Red Bull's Pierre Gasly made a mistake and took to the runoff area, as did Alex Albon in the Toro Rosso. while Romain Grosjean also took off a bit of paintwork. Gasly's teammate was in trouble too, Max Verstappen following him through, only to catch the wall with his front right. With Hamilton in the garage, Ferrari ventured out on the soft tyres. Sebastian Vettel went quickest, only to be usurped shortly after by teammate Charles Leclerc, keen to bounce back after a horrid time in Monaco. With temperatures higher than in FP1 and expected to be even hotter on race day, several drivers were concerned about durability of the soft compound.
I need the box soon, it's getting a bit dangerous.
Copy that, Nico. Stand by.
Both Haas drivers were asking similar questions, but Kevin Magnussen's P5 showed he might have got to grips with it slightly better than teammate Grosjean, who languished down in P17. McLaren, Alfa Romeo and Racing Point have all gambled by bringing extra sets of soft tyres over the harder compounds this weekend. So it will be interesting to see whether that compromises them in the fight for midfield supremacy. So a Ferrari 1-2 at the top, with Bottas around a tenth back in P3, and McLaren's Carlos Sainz with a standout drive in P4, less than 4/10 off Leclerc's fastest time of the day. The two Renaults of Nico Hülkenberg and Daniel Ricciardo were sandwiched by the two Racing Points, with Sergio Perez more than a tenth faster than his Canadian teammate Lance Stroll, who now has a grandstand named after him at his home race. Sainz's teammate Lando Norris was a second off the pace in P11, just ahead of the Red Bull pairing of Gasly and Verstappen, and the two Toro Rossos of Albon and Danick Kvyat just behind. Antonio Giovinazzi missed most of the session after his FP1 crash, his Alfa Romeo requiring a new gearbox, for which he won't suffer a grid penalty. With clear skies in Montreal, FP3 gave Formula One's drivers one last chance to tune their cars ahead of what promises to be a tight qualifying session this afternoon, especially in the midfield. Charles Leclerc was pushing hard. The Ferrari driver enjoyed most of the session at the top of the timesheet, but his teammate Sebastian Vettel put in a late push to better him with a 1 minute 10.843 to set the fastest time of the weekend so far. Lance Stroll endured a very dramatic entry to the pits, his Racing Point erupting with flames behind.
We've got a hydraulic leak. Looks like a hydraulic leak.
With the car having to be stripped in the garage, it wasn't the preparation the Canadian outfit wanted for their first home race. Another Canadian was out on track, but the Iceman kept his cool and distance, radioing back as only Kimi Räikkönen could.
Okay, there's that animal running around before turn 6. Not in the middle of the track. I don't know what they're called.
The Alfa Romeos couldn't find the speed they had yesterday, Räikkönen ultimately down in 16th, behind teammate Antonio Giovinazzi in 15th. With the midfield so close, anywhere drivers can find tenths must be exploited, but Romain Grosjean was lucky this brush with the Wall of Champions wasn't any harder, as he pushed to get his Haas further up the order. With Ferraris in P1 and P2, Mercedes P3 and P4, it was the Red Bulls of Max Verstappen and Pierre Gasly behind in P5 and 6, having spent time on both the medium and soft compound tyres. Renault's Daniel Ricciardo was top of the tight midfield fight, which once again had a mix of teams. Lando Norris riding high on his way to P8 for McLaren, Sergio Perez in the remaining Racing Point ahead of Toro Rosso's Danick Kvyat in P10. Having spent a long time in the garage after his kiss with the wall, Grosjean was down in P17, ahead of the two Williams and Stroll. Teammate Kevin Magnussen managed P12. Both Haas and Alfa Romeo have both shown this weekend that they do have a chance to fight for the top 10.
There are certainly drivers doing more competitive times than Lance Stroll at the moment, as he gives it everything into the final chicane and out of it as well. Goes 14th, gets out of the bottom 5 for the time being. Next across the line, Carlos Sainz goes 6th fastest. That should leave him safe. Ricciardo, 8th fastest. Crossing the line next will be Nico Hülkenberg to try and get out of Q1. He does. Stroll is going to get knocked out in Q1 for the 11th successive time as Fiat goes 10th fastest. We're on board now with Antonio Giovinazzi. Gets himself out of the elimination zone, but only just. And I think his teammate Kimi Räikkönen next across the line has not replaced him in the 15 to go through. Raikkonen's out, couldn't go any faster. Perez next to try and lift himself out. Oh, and by 7/100ths of a second, Sergio Perez misses out too, and it's 2 Racing Point cars in the home Grand Prix knocked out in Q1. Lance Stroll, he's been beaten in qualifying by his teammate Sergio Perez. He lost a lot of running today though, missed completely FP3, and this is the move that made Martin Brundle exclaim, "Oh my goodness." That Sergio Perez locking up into the hairpin, that would have cost him time there, but it's 2 Racing Points out. Kimi Räikkönen out as well. The 2 Williams also out. George Russell out qualifying Robert Kubica for the 7th race in a row. Max Verstappen a 19.6 for the first sector. That's good. It might be good enough if he can carry on that sort of a pace. Albon leads across the line. That's a crash, and it is the Haas of Kevin Magnussen. And that's going to compromise his teammate Romain Grosjean, who is the next to cross the line. And that is a big accident there for Kevin Magnussen, who lost it out of the final chicane and then slewed across the track and straight into the pit wall. And it is going to cost Max Verstappen dear as well.
I guess that's it.
Yeah. You guessed right. Magnussen in the wall.
Max Verstappen denied the chance to get into Q3 and knocked out. Well, let's just have a look here then. Takes a bit of curb. Oh. And absolutely no avoiding that whatsoever.
He'd got it all lit up. He was driving for the line, but he's hit the wall at a sort of a 20-30 degree angle that's ripped the suspension and broken the wheel, and he still kept his foot in.
Red flag. BSC.
Mate, that's all luck. That's all luck.
He was on for a very good lap, mate. That was going to be a good lap.
I can't believe it. Can't believe my luck, mate.
As Grosjean was the next car to cross the line and therefore couldn't at racing pace, and Fiat, Albon and Giovinazzi also out as well. Here's Bottas's spin, and he's so fortunate to avoid the wall. Good car control.
He was clever on the brake pedal as well to lock the fronts up to make it swing back round again. But there's a healthy dose of luck as well involved in that.
Are you okay, Valtteri?
All good, all good.
Round of applause and appreciation from the fans down there. So, Hülkenberg, 5th fastest, Lando Norris, 7th fastest, Carlos Sainz pits, Valtteri Bottas there next to cross the line, and he goes only 5th fastest. Really disappointing qualifying for Valtteri Bottas. Hamilton extends his advantage in pole position and now waits for the Ferrari challenge. Here comes Charles Leclerc, goes 3rd fastest, misses the front row. His teammates on the front row, his teammates on pole. Sebastian Vettel for the 2nd time in 2 years, and for the 5th time overall, gets the standing ovation from the Ferrari fans. It's pole in Canada for Sebastian Vettel, and boy oh boy did this man need that right now.
Yes, yes, at pole position. Great, man. Yes. Woohoo!
Behind the front row and Charles Leclerc, mentioned to Daniel Ricciardo, 4th on the grid. Front row for Renault, their best qualifying for many a long time. Pierre Gasly down to 5th for Red Bull. Valtteri Bottas starts 6th for Mercedes. He really didn't have a good Q3 at all. Hülkenberg out qualified by his teammate, starts 7th, but then Norris ahead of Sainz. Magnussen starts 10th at the moment, but we'll see if that Haas can be put together again without the need for a new chassis.
hero of the day, Gilles Villeneuve. And Villeneuve's going through! Fantastic! Gilles Villeneuve leads! One of the finest drives I have ever seen in Grand Prix racing. Oh, the champagne, the traditional champagne for Gilles Villeneuve. The darling of the Italian crowd.
Salut Gilles, words that adorn the track here on the start-finish line in Montreal. A simple phrase and one that pays tribute to the man after whom this racing circuit is named. Canada's first superstar of motorsport, Gilles Villeneuve. Villeneuve had a humble childhood, growing up less than an hour away from the circuit that would eventually bear his name, in the small town of Berthierville. It was here, where a museum now honours his legacy, that his love of motorsport took hold, with the little Canadian cutting his teeth in the wild world of snowmobile racing. His success was immediate, and his childhood home was soon bulging with trophies. The prize money, meanwhile, was put to good use, helping to finance his track racing career, with Villeneuve racing in Formula Ford before progressing to Formula Atlantic, where yet again his innate speed and natural car control caught the eye. Villeneuve's big break came in 1976 when, driving this car in a Formula Atlantic race at Trois-Rivières, he beat that year's eventual Formula One champion James Hunt and several other Grand Prix stars of the day. Hunt went away raving about the Canadian, and his McLaren team were quick to sign him up to drive a third car at the 1977 British Grand Prix. But while Villeneuve impressed mightily in the Grand Prix, driving an aging M23 from 9th on the grid to 4th before hitting technical issues, the team's boss Teddy Mayer opted not to take up a full-time contract with Villeneuve, and he never raced for McLaren again. Villeneuve's destiny laid with another team, Ferrari. The partnership was a match made in heaven. In fact, the sight of a sideways Scarlet Ferrari with Villeneuve at the wheel captured the public's imagination like precious little in F1 history.
You can see them, you can hear them. I can hear them roaring over the engine noise. The crowd is really going mad.
And by the time of the inaugural Canadian Grand Prix in Montreal in 1978, Gilles' popularity at home had exploded. That he then scored a maiden Grand Prix win in front of his adoring crowd only increased the sense of feeling, not just in Canada, but around the world. Though quiet and mild-mannered out of the car, in the cockpit this was a driver who just would not quit.
And it's fallen off at the middle of his car, he's gone sideways, he's managed to collect it, again through incredible car control.
Who pressed on regardless, always pushed to the limits, and often hauled his machinery to feats it had no right to achieve. Little wonder he became the darling of the Tifosi, not to mention team boss Enzo Ferrari. Today, it's hard not to hear Villeneuve's name without picturing him banging wheels with René Arnoux at Dijon in what remains arguably Formula One's most iconic battle. Or the sight of him wrestling a three-wheeled Ferrari back to the pits at unbelievable speed at Zandvoort in 1979. And what about Spain, 1981, when in an exemplary performance he overcame his Ferrari's handling deficiencies to beat faster rivals and score his 6th Formula One victory.
And Gilles Villeneuve wins a fantastic drive, resisting pressure all the way. I am sure that he must be absolutely shattered in the car.
He was, according to anyone and everyone that ever saw him race, a Formula One world champion in waiting. But tragically, Canada's great hero would never fulfill his destiny. During qualifying for the 1982 Belgian Grand Prix at Zolder, Villeneuve's famous number 27 Ferrari collided and was launched into a terrifying accident. Several hours later, in hospital, he would succumb to his injuries, and plunge the world of motor racing into mourning. In his small hometown of just 4,000 people, an astonishing 20,000 turned up to pay their respects at his funeral. And even today, 37 years after his death, he's still not been replaced in the public's consciousness or indeed their affections. Not even by his son, Jacques, who was able to fulfill his father's legacy in being crowned Formula One world champion in 1997. He remains an icon, a racing hero, a man who lived life on the edge and for whom the pursuit of speed was simply everything.
.70 laps ahead of us here in Montreal. It's lights out, away we go. Good start from Vettel and from Hamilton. Leclerc now comes up on the inside, and you've got Ricciardo ahead of Gasly and Bottas. Vettel into turn one, wheel to wheel. Leclerc and Hamilton, but Hamilton gets the inside line through turn two, and he's away. Ricciardo a bit unstable, but he's okay ahead of Gasly. Hulkenberg started well and maybe got ahead of Bottas as well. There's Lando Norris now behind Bottas, and Max Verstappen right in there, in the thick of it as well as they go through the first chicane. We ride on board with Alex Albon there, and you can see absolutely no chance of avoiding contact and collision. And this is the start from Romain Grosjean, so I wonder, Martin, was he the Haas then that went off into turn one?
He had a poor start, did Romain, way too much wheel spin, and there, I feel for Alex Albon there. And look, he's trying to throw the carbon fibre confetti out of his cockpit there as Romain Grosjean.
Lando Norris has a problem with his right rear. He's hit the wall. I would imagine it's the wall of champions that he's hit. Look how hot those brakes are getting at the rear, on fire as well. Lando Norris's race is run and done. Here's Lando Norris in then to the final chicane, locks up. No, he did not touch the wall, Martin.
Yeah, he's got a.
That's where it went, on the straight.
Yeah, it's a brake issue that's melted the rear suspension.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah, right puncture. Something's happened.
Okay. We will.
We're gonna have to stop. All right.
Really sorry, mate. I'm really sorry.
We're watching now Kevin Magnussen. Behind him is Danny Kvyat. Magnussen started from the pit lane. He's got the inside line there, but Kvyat ahead of him. This is how Sergio Perez got ahead of Kevin Magnussen on the brakes. It's not just one brave man that goes around the outside of Kevin Magnussen, Martin. There's two that have done it today. Perez has a little go on Romain Grosjean. Down into turn one, they go wheel to wheel, and they touch, and Grosjean goes off the track. But only enough to allow Sergio Perez past, and Perez was not going to let that one go whatsoever. I'm just expecting a team radio here now.
Yeah, okay, report that to the race controller.
I'm not entirely surprised by Romain Grosjean's message there.
Taking candy from a baby, this one.
Yeah, we are on board with Valtteri Bottas, and he lifted off because the Renault was defending for all its might, and now they go wheel to wheel into the chicane. It looks a lot more dramatic than Bottas thought it would be, and Daniel Ricciardo manages to hold on to fifth place there.
The Renault was moving around a lot, I must say.
But Sebastian Vettel, I think, really for the first time this afternoon, under pressure.
Hamilton with DRS behind, 1 second. Engine 1 is available.
He's just gone very wide in turn 10 as Lewis Hamilton. That's cost him dearly.
That's the second time I think he's done that into the hairpin this afternoon.
Oh, he's gone wide.
DRS. Copy.
Sebastian Vettel goes wide, and Lewis Hamilton thought there was a gap, but the wall and Sebastian Vettel moving to the right-hand side closed that gap down. Has Vettel just got away with an error and preserved his lead in this Canadian Grand Prix?
Let's see what happens. Yeah, the back just would not stick. That's bad news for him in terms of his absolute pace as well. He didn't do anything wrong.
You just came on the track so dangerous. Yeah, copy Lewis, we're on it.
Was that dangerous by Sebastian Vettel? Hamilton really had to jam on the brakes, didn't he? Max Verstappen, after his pit stop, climbing back up through the field. We saw him get past Hulkenberg. He's now got past Ricciardo, and he's up into fifth place.
This is the worst
experience I've ever had in any race car, ever.
None of us are happy about this pace. The guys stayed up all night to fix the car.
I know,
so get home now.
I know.
It means that for us it's also not a nice experience. It's enough now. That's what it means. Enough means enough.
Sebastian Vettel has been given a 5-second time penalty for an unsafe re-entry and forcing another driver off the track.
Vettel has 5-second penalties, so we just need to stay in his gearbox.
Vettel has now got 12 laps to try and build at least a 5-second gap and win a race that he's dominated, Martin.
We've got a 5-second time penalty for unsafe re-entry. Head down, head down. We have Hamilton 3 seconds behind.
Yeah, I had nowhere to go. Seriously, I had nowhere to go. I didn't see him.
Copy.
You know, if you go through the grass and you come back, you have amazing grip. Where the hell am I supposed to go? I had grass on my wheels. It's his fault if he decides to go that way. If he got to the inside, he got past me.
Okay, stay focused. Copy that. Stay focused. 10 laps to go.
I am focused, but they're stealing the race from us.
Copy that.
That is Lance Stroll, and he has got past Carlos Sainz, and he's moved up into 9th place. And right behind Carlos Sainz now is Danny Kvyat in the Toro Rosso. And Kvyat's going to go for it down the inside. And that's a very neat move indeed by the Russian. Lovely stuff from Danny Kvyat. Carlos Sainz in trouble as Stroll passes him, and then the Toro Rosso too.
Well earned by Stroll. He drove that first stint brilliantly.
As the top two have given us some great excitement this afternoon, make their way out of the final corner. Sebastian Vettel takes the checkered flag, but Lewis Hamilton wins the Canadian Grand Prix. It is Hamilton for the 7th time that will take victory in Montreal.
Nice work, mate. You forced the error, and that's the win for you.
That is not the way naturally I wanted to win, but I would have been past if it wasn't for the wall there. So big thank you.
No, guys. No. Not like that. Not like that. No.